I'm IA Watch publisher Carl Ayers. Ethics. It's not hyperbole to call it the fundamental building block of any compliance program. We spoke with ethics professor Jeffrey Loewenstein, an assistant professor at the College of Business at the University of Illinois-Urbana, Champaign, about tips for how compliance officers can better teach ethics.
You have to provide concrete examples so that the folks on the other side who haven't been through all that training, they can grasp what to you is obvious. You want the early examples to be as simple as possible. Think of them like parables, whether it's Aesop's fables or a religious parable, right, that you'd hear in church or synagogue or something like that. The later examples can be richer, like a business case or Harvard Business Review, something like that. But the early ones should be as simple as they possibly can be. Very little context, very simple situations, so that the core concern that's at stake is as clear as it can be. Then the richer ones allow you to fill in, here's what it really is going to look like. It's messy, it's complicated, and it appears in all these different situations. But that's only interesting when they get it, and they only get it if you use a very simple example, and ideally 2 examples. The richer examples that we just talked about are providing an opportunity for people to test themselves. Do I see the conflict or not? But you can also think about the question they could be running through their minds, which is, what are the goals that I have in this situation? And do my own personal goals or do our organizational goals conflict with those of my client? And if so, then I better take action to address it.
So let's give you an example. Danny, an analyst at Active Traders, a registered investment advisor, sometimes brings work home on weekends, which the firm permits. On Thanksgiving weekend, his parents come to visit, staying at his apartment. His father finds information on research and recommendations Danny was working on regarding Meg's Mugs, a little-known small-cap company that Danny expects to become very profitable. His father fails to mention that he eyed the research, called his broker, and bought Meg's Mugs. Active Traders recommends the stock to its clients the next week. When Danny visits his parents at Christmas, his father remarks, "You really picked a winner in that Meg's Mugs. It's been climbing steadily since I bought it. Got any other tips for me?" What should Danny do? When it comes to dealing with a conflict, Loewenstein says you really have 3 choices. 1, you can disclose it. 2, you can recuse yourself. Or 3, you can go to someone else, probably a supervisor. Loewenstein says compliance officers should be careful not to assume that your audience recognizes conflicts as easily as you do.
I think the key issue is not only do we want to provide motivation and the reasons for acting ethically, like we just discussed, your reputation, future value creation, long-term relationships, but you also want to provide information. And it's easy to assume as a compliance officer that because it's obvious to you, everyone else will see it too. And you can't forget how much training it took you to get to the point where you just see it. And you have to allow them to see it too by providing them simple examples, comparing across examples, and then giving them the richer examples so that they not only have the confidence and motivation, but the actual ability to recognize and handle ethical conflicts. I think we've assumed that because you're an adult and you know right and wrong, that therefore you know all you need to know. And that's really unfair to compliance officers who've learned so much more than that, and they have to share some of that knowledge so the rest of us can try and do as well as they do.
He warns the stakes are so much higher these days for ethical lapses, stiffer penalties, reputational harm, damaged careers. If you can teach ethics in a way that gets through to your audience, you'll find lasting benefits. I'm IA Watch publisher Carl Ayers.